Welcome to the Didi and Lital Show. Advice, thoughts, and stories from a married couple on cybersecurity, technology, and life in general. Now here are your hosts, Didi and Lital.
Hello and welcome to the Didi and Lital Show. It's another week, Didi. What's going on?
I can't even tell the weather. I started the pre-recording with the flannel, and I'm already hot under the collar, so I went into the gun show, which unfortunately is not a gun and not a show. I need to work out more, clearly. Yes.
Yeah, the weather is awesome.
The weather is awesome.
That's a wonderful fall around here.
Yes.
What is it? It was in the 80s all week.
And they cleared our blockage. Yesterday, Alex and I were walking on the river. They cleared our blockage.
So we need to stand up paddleboard
this
week.
We need to stand on paddleboard
How about
this week.
Tomorrow?
How about today? How about today?
Maybe this afternoon. The thing is, the sun sets so early, and it's going to be worse because we're changing the time.
Life is terrible. It's really hard being rich white dudes in California, in Massachusetts.
Yeah,
it's
definitely horrible. Yeah. We cannot handle those difficulties.
Yes.
Having the riverfront house.
Yeah, the caviar is sticking to our teeth.
What did your dad used to say about your sister learning tennis?
Yes, my grandfather. My grandfather, who was a very cynical man, used to make fun of my sister that she has, because she used to always whine. And he said, yeah, Verd has such a hard life. She is forced to play tennis and eat caviar. That was his saying about the hard, difficult life of my sister.
Yeah.
Her main problem was always the fact that I grew to be almost 6 foot tall, and she's about like 5'2", with an effort. So, and my mom always made fun and said, "What would be if it would flipped?" Anyways, we're not talking about the joys of the Dotan clan.
Yeah, I wanted to bring a topic today that is I think is top of mind to a lot of people in tech in the last few years, and it's kind of like I talked with a lot of people, and one of the reasons that actually looking at the election cycle is not for all the other reasons that people vote to, but one big reason, which is what will happen with antitrust laws, what will happen with antitrust regulation, and will Lina Khan remain the one responsible?
Please no.
Yeah. And to explain, the last few years were really, really hard for small tech because Lina Khan came into antitrust regulatory, the FTC, and she came with this agenda of being really, really anti-big tech. But not just, going after things that are already happening, but actually being extremely proactive against M&As, preventing companies from becoming potentially too big. And that created huge problem for M&As. We've seen big M&A that collapsed, which collapsed the Figma and Adobe one. That was big, painful example. And what we've seen is that many of the M&As, unless they're very tiny, like my company or my previous company that I was in that was acquired by Palo, or your company was acquired by Cisco, small Series A companies, really too small to even be an impact for the revenue. But a little bit bigger ones, basically M&As evaporated in the past few years, and together with not so positive IPO scheme in the market, IPOs became extremely hard. It's getting hard to be a startup. You don't have an exit other than I keep on building myself if you cannot be acquired and if you cannot easily IPO. And I think everybody now is kind of like, let's wait for what's happening in November and see what's going on. So we had those conversation about the good, the bad, the ugly, what we like, what we don't like about the, antitrust and this kind of regulation, and what we think has been done well, and what we would have changed if we had to kind of change that. And I think this is coming on news from a few weeks ago in which the FTC is moving on with potentially splitting Google as a company. Still kind of like no clarity on how, but it came after it was identified that they are too big, especially in advertising. The decision was they are a monopoly in advertising, and because of that, company needs to be broken. So that's interesting. So where do you want to start with this topic?
I want to start by saying, as usual, the regulator is stupid and late. So if you look...
Absolutely. Come now?
Exactly. So
it's about time, right?
I think Dave knows the Bell story of how they broke up the Bells into the baby Bells, if you remember that one.
Remind me.
Yeah. So, in the
Bell
US,
Lab?
No, Bell. So the reason
the Bell phone company.
But that's the thing. They had Bell Labs as one of the biggest innovators in the world.
It's not just that.
But yeah, Bell.
But by the time that they came up to break Bell into competing companies, it was already not relevant because Cell came up, satellite came up. By the time internet came up, by the time they got to break up the Bells, it didn't matter anymore. So
they're coming now with breaking the ad business of Google.
Yes.
Basically, at a time when ChatGPT and other chatbots are now being embedded into the AI of cell phones. I mean, the main thing is they go after this agreement that Google had with iPhone, in which they are, by default, the search engine. And because of that, basically, they have monopoly in search and in the claim and in advertising and search.
This is
and obviously they have Android, so they are by default the search engine on all Android phones. So by that, there is a capture of the search market. But guess what? They're coming with it now that I think 50% of search is moving out of traditional search and moving into AI bots. Last week, I kind of counted it. More than 50% of my searches were in ChatGPT because the results are so much better. I can do so much. I can ask, additional questions, and it's so much more helpful. I only use now Google search when all I need is directions, or I need a specific URL of a company or something. When it's something with a little bit more sophistication, I go immediately to ChatGPT.
I go to ChatGPT unless I'm looking for directions in my car or looking for a song. I use ChatGPT. And
it's so good.
I think it's not
I could give it a picture of food and tell it to estimate the calories in it and nutrition. It's amazing. Use it.
Yes.
Seriously. So too late. You're coming now to break a monopoly that is not a monopoly anymore.
And not only that, if you look at the Bell example is probably the best example because they worked so hard. They broke it into tiny companies. They tried. And
then cell phones started.
And then we're back into a monopoly between Verizon and AT&T own 99% of the market, and everybody still hates the phone companies.
But also there is this point exactly, and I like it when the All In podcast mentioned it, and then I want to repeat it because I think it's important. People hate the really big companies, too big to whatever to exist. Google, like Bell, is one of the only companies that became extremely big, but also did some really important research that is not in the day-to-day, realm of business, but is so helpful to the point that, for example, a week ago, two Nobel laureates in chemistry were announced. They are coming from Google, from a project that was at the time a breakthrough in how folding of proteins models. If for people that are not coming from this kind of background, the way a protein is folded actually dictates its functionality, and there is tons of computation that needs to be put into building those models and understanding the 3D model of a protein. And Google made it simple with a bunch of computational capabilities and, solved the problem. And it's a breakthrough. Basically, all your biochemistry, every pharma company is using it. And, time to market now of any compound is, accelerated. And yeah, they did it for the betterment of humankind.
They didn't. They did that in the hope that they'll build a business out of it.
Yeah, and they didn't. But it is because they had the flourishing business that was coming in and they could afford it, which is the same as Bell at the time that had Bell Labs, that basically all the modern capabilities that you know of were coming out of that. Like, look at Bell Labs and the amount of innovation that came in tens of years, decades, that they were there. They were the forefront of innovation that was not coming from the military.
Yep.
Right? Like outside of DARPA,
and they did a lot of.
They were the number one creator of innovation.
And they did a whole bunch of stuff for DARPA as well. But
sure.
But the thing is that I think so I think here's the philosophy of regulation and dealing with antitrust, and here's the failing of it. Are you familiar with the tragedy of the commons?
I think so.
Okay. The tragedy of the commons is an economical mind exercise. Mm-hmm. It says, for those that don't know what the commons are, originally it was the common fields, grass fields used around a village to basically let the cows eat something. And the tragedy of the commons means that, let's say we are a village and and all of us have like 5 cows. It's my incentive to have 6 cows and 7 cows that eat on the commons. But eventually,
food will be left on the commons.
Exactly.
You'll eat out.
Exactly. So if it's my field, I regulate it. But if it's the commons, it's my interest to make the most of it on your expense.
Right.
And that's the tragedy of the commons.
It's a zero-sum the game and not a win-win.
Exactly. And because of that, the tragedy of the commons is the reason that we try to regulate, is because we claim that if we let somebody be too big, they'll kill everybody else.
Right.
And we fail because by the time we actually come in,
it's a done deal.
It's a done deal. And if you want to look at innovation, if you look at medical companies work in 2 models. Tiny startup that invades the molecule. Most of the time, it's funded by the university or the government. The NIH pays for the majority of these things. Then the companies get bought by
pharma once they have like the initial proof of concept. Animal models, whatever, they'll be bought
because it's impossible to bring anything to market.
Right. They cannot bring to market. They can not do all the later stage clinical trials. They need somebody that has the machine.
Yes.
And funding.
And what Ms. Khan doesn't realize is that the stupid regulations that were imposed on people made it so far that it's impossible to enter the game at a high level without going through all the price of regulation. Right now in the tech industry, we're experiencing the same thing. If I want to sell to Israel, I need to host my cloud shit in Israel. There's a whole bunch of regulations.
Sure. Each country will have its own regulation.
If I need to sell to India, I need to host it in AWS in India. If I want to sell to Canada, guys, we don't force you to change fucking hockey. Don't make us host in Canada. Stop.
I didn't realize there is a Canadian cloud.
There is a Canadian cloud. It says a boot.
Is it working?
No, it says a boot, and it's on strike half the time.
Exactly.
And they haven't decided if they want to speak French or English.
Okay.
Hopefully Pat's not listening to me and gonna make fun of me of this. But yes, there is a Canadian cloud, and it's primarily the stupid French-speaking Canadians that force you to go there. But it's a thing. And right now, instead of leveraging the size of the cloud and making it an even playing field, the local regulators are causing a problem. Unfortunately, the only people that can deal with this cost of regulation is Cisco, Microsoft, Google.
Yeah, just the big guys. So that is the thing. Also, because everything is global now, I think part of the Adobe Figma story is that they had to go through not just US antitrust, but the UK antitrust and then the EU antitrust. So this is nuts. And each one will have the flavor, and it doesn't worth it. At that point, you're paying lawyers and all those experts that will go through that. And the time to market, you're losing 2 years with not, stalling your innovation, everybody in the company just working on that. This is impossible.
Yes. FedRAMP, my favorite thing, FedRAMP.
Don't go there. That's an episode on its own. But my thought is there are some behaviors. Instead of going after the M&A by itself, I think M&A are inevitable and are good and are actually putting a stream of innovation into the big ones that otherwise will die, and we don't want them to die. They're good for the economy at the end of the day. I think the problem is things like we discussed in the past, and go check it, is things like Microsoft doing the bundling, the suite, which is fine as it is. They can bundle. That's why they buy a company to offer it as a bundle. But the problem is they drop prices to free and basically kill complete markets and kill innovation over there, because we know it very well. You give passwordless and MFA and authentication and those kind of things for free with maybe a shitty product, then it's hard to compete against you and be a viable proposition, because people get you for free to get the Microsoft.
To get hacked for free
and have the Excel spreadsheets and email client.
But they get hacked for free.
Yeah.
So luckily enough, they're bad enough at this. At least
but there are so many others that if the regulator would have looked at some behaviors and actually put brakes on what's allowed and what's not allowed on the behavior of a conglomerate too big to play, instead of just saying, blankly, we're going to stop big acquisitions, we're going to put, I think companies should be acquired, innovation should come in. It's a good thing for everyone. The thing is, you acquired now a company, you should not kill the market by just offering the tech for free.
I think they're playing too
That's a problem.
I think that the problem is that they're doing a disjointed operation in the market. So if you look at, for example, fracking, first they pushed for fracking and then they became anti-fracking. Fracking, for people that don't know, it's a way to extract oil and gas, natural gas, in a way that is claimed to be bad for the environment, not good for the environment. It doesn't matter. But the problem is that the regulators need to understand that they're very heavy-handed. So if they come in with FedRAMP and SOC 2 and a whole bunch of regulations of locations and a whole bunch of other stuff, they need to understand that what they're doing is driving the market to go up. And
because the only one that can afford dealing with the regulation are the big guys.
And
it's like us with the conservation committee that they were like, please hire an additional lawyer to go check and go do. And I was like, okay, I'm not just going to kill the whole project. Like, I don't think I want to even afford it. Like, I'm not a contractor, not interested. Thank you. Bye-bye. And that's how they kill projects from happening. Regulation actually keeps the economy stagnant and skewed towards the big ones that can actually deal with it, hire the lawyers, hire the experts. If you're small, it just kills you.
Yeah. And I think this is the main thing that the regulators are not thinking because they're disjointed.
They're like pro small business, then they're killing small business.
Because they don't know how they're killing small business, because they don't know.
Because they think they're good?
No.
By definition,
no.
They have this.
No, what happens is that
I'm sure they're good. Well, and they're doing the good stuff.
Remember the IQ? Remember the IQ comment from an episode ago?
It's not the IQ. It's being. It's a bias. You always think that you're doing good.
No, it's
and you don't see the bad stuff you're doing.
It's the Dunning-Kruger effect. Remember the Dunning-Kruger effect?
It's always seeing yourself as doing the right thing and not being able to think for a second if the implications that are actually the opposite of what you think that you're doing.
So in reality, what happens with the regulators is each one is in charge of section 83B something, and that's all they know. So each regulator looks at the cog that they're regulating. And it's basically the thing that they're supposed to stop, the tragedy of the commons. They're causing the tragedy of the commons. That it got to the point that if you want to pass all the regulations to put a toilet in San Francisco, it costs $1.5 million for one porta potty in California. Because all the regulations you need to...
Because shit in California is
expensive.
Damn expensive.
Yes, shit is expensive.
That's why it's done in the street.
Yes. So that is the point, that every regulator adds a little more. And that's where the story of the straw that broke the camel's back. You're familiar with that?
Yep, of course.
That's the thing. That the way to stop this is to take a look at regulations as a whole. You need to look at a regulation as a whole and measure what is the desired outcome that you want to get to. If desired outcome is X, what are we doing centrally? So the fact that the regulators are so decentralized, that there's a regulator at the town level, then there's at the county level,
and the state level, and then there is federal, and
exactly. That means that there is no real plan into where they're trying to get to. They need to have, if they want to stick their nose into something, they should probably have a structure on their own and understand the construct of
F it, kill it all. Too much. Like, you cannot organize that.
So from my perspective, so one thing we do need to remember about regulators, as the person that hates regulators the most, I don't think anybody hates regulation more than I do.
I think you hate tax more than that.
Yeah, it's related. They're cousins. It's basically,
which one is worse, tax or regulation?
It's the same thing. It's like saying what's worse, the hooves of the donkey or the ass of the donkey. It's the same donkey. It's the same problem.
It's not the same problem.
Regulators and taxes are the same thing.
I mean, usually people that support increasing one also likes increasing the other one. Maybe that's the correlation.
It's the same thing. The only way that you pay for regulators is by taxes. So it's basically the same thing. You tax people to regulate them. You regulate them by taxing them. Taxes and regulation are the same thing. It's big government.
Yep.
So as the person that hates both of them, and as I said, it's the same side of the same cow. The reality is that without regulations, people will sell kids to slavery. This is not a question. People need to be governed because people will, and businesses will.
I mean, I'm not saying not to have laws. You're going to an extreme here.
But even regulation. Companies will do the worst thing possible when given an option of doing the right thing or doing the bad thing. Big corporations will always do the bad thing.
Okay.
The tragedy of the commons. They will always choose to ignore.
Because they'll try to maximize until it's completely cannibalizing everything, and
Exactly.
you kill your own consumers with whatever materials you put in the food.
Exactly. So this has been proven out through human existence, and that's why you need regulators.
Sure.
But I think the regulators right now are in the point in time where, because even the most liberal country in the world, liberal in terms of the libertarian aspect, the United States, the fact that a big chunk of our GDP goes into regulation, a huge chunk. If tomorrow I fire half the regulators in the US, we're going to have unemployment in the 10% range. So this is the reason that nobody's firing those regulators. So going back to the antitrust example, that level of regulation, they became too big and they can't regulate themselves. And that's the problem. And the only way to start this is by doing some cut. Because one of the things I've learned is that when you cut the Microsoft way of, we cut the worst 5% every time. You cut and cut and cut and cut and force for the cut. You force optimization. There's no other way to do this. You need to hope that the system will regulate itself.
Okay. So you're saying less people in the FTC and other regulatory bodies, and start by removing, the bottom 5% employees over there, and
Yes.
that will improve the state.
Yes.
Maybe.
That's my proposal one.
Yeah.
Do you have a better?
Deregulation in general will be good. I think focus on the things that actually, I think asking the right questions and looking at the data of what kind of things had positive outcomes on increasing, prosperity, increasing competition, versus what seems to be populist. And I think they're doing very much of the populist thing that is trendy in the circles that they are in.
So the best
and
thing,
as you said, they do it too late anyhow.
Yeah. So this is the thing that they need to look at. Right now, Europe is failing, Canada is failing. Look at what they're doing and do the opposite. That's my recommendation.
In general, let's hope we are heading in a different direction than Europe and Canada.
Yes.
Even Canada seems to be going in a different direction.
Yes. Yes.
Soon.
So Trudeau on his way out.
I don't know, but Trudeau is on his way out. But yesterday he posted on Twitter that he's stopping immigration for 2 years to Canada.
Cool.
That seems like a shift.
Will we still be able to get hockey players?
I don't care.
Oh, I do care. I do care.
I think that's
maybe he'll take away Brady Kachuk's visa and we can have him.
I'm
as a
sure
boy.
he can get a few Russian and Czech and Swedish and whomever
Cool.
the Canadians need.
Need people that can put the puck in the net.
Sure.
Cool.
So good. Another week is gone. We voted this week by
voted.
mail. So if you're voting, enjoy your voting.
Yes.
Vote. No if. If you can vote, vote.
Vote.
It's important.
And vote.
Especially with all the local
Ballots.
races and ballots. Like, look, learn, educate yourself. I think the one good thing about this mail-in ballot, that you can spend time and educate yourself with a ballot when you sit and think and Google it and learn. So at least use that. And we'll see what happens soon. By the time this goes out, we'll be very close to election day, maybe even after. Who knows?
Let's bias people. Yes on one, no, 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 no. That's the
if
vote.
you're in Massachusetts, our thing is vote John Deaton to Massachusetts Senate, and yes on one, no on two, big no on two. If you like psychedelics, do whatever. We are big no and no,
Don't explain.
Whatever.
Don't explain. Just do yes, no, 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 no. Don't think. Just do what I say. Yes, no, 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 no.
Good. Let's get the Warren out of here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye. See you next time.